Chairman, I also submit the pleadings in the case of Judicial Watch versus U.S. Department of Justice.
Objection.
A document entitled DOJ Claims Unprecedented Deep Fake.
Objection.
Transcript tampering. DOJ says written record of Biden interview with prosecutors omitted words.
Objection.
DOJ refuses to release audio of Biden and the Her interview.
Objection. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Before anyone else on the other side saddles up and gets on their high legal horses, I just want to remind the committee that the chairman is 754 days into his own subpoena defiance. Mr. Attorney General, last week it was reported that House Ethics Panel subpoenas DOJ for Gates records. It was a May 14, 2024 political piece. I'd like to submit it to the record with unanimous consent.
Without objection.
I just want to get this straight. Mr. Gates wants the Attorney General to reopen and publicize evidence from an investigation that a Donald Trump-appointed prosecutor closed against President Biden, while at the same time, Mr. Gates himself is being protected by the same DOJ policy that is refusing to voluntarily turn over evidence from Mr. Gates' sex trafficking investigation. Mr. Attorney General, can you just briefly, without going into the facts of that case, address why that is the DOJ policy as it relates to the current president and any other requests about closed investigations?
Yeah, without referencing any case, we try to protect the law enforcement files of the Justice Department so that in future investigations, people are willing to cooperate with us. We understand Congress's concerns, and when we have an obligation to assess whether the information that we've provided is sufficient to accommodate the legitimate needs of the Congress. All of the reasons that Congress has given us for why they need the audio are satisfied with respect to the tapes. That is, all of the legitimate reasons given, the reasons that relate to legislative work of the committee. As to that, we've accommodated by providing the audio. We provided Mr. Her's testimony in full, and we've provided Mr. Her's testimony report. We've gone as far as we can go to accommodate. We're trying to protect our ability to do investigations in this case and in any other case.
Mr. Attorney General, let's set the facts straight here. And my job is to kind of lead an intervention for my colleagues. I think they need it. The Attorney General did not prosecute Donald Trump in New York. It was the result of Donald Trump's choices. Donald Trump chose to live in New York. He chose to commit his crimes in New York. He was afforded a right to be tried by his neighbors, jurors, in New York. He chose that jury in New York, working with his counsel, and they chose to make him a 34-time over convicted felon. But some of the choices the department has made in the recent years is that the president that was first appointed, that Donald Trump appointed the U.S. attorney who is investigating the current president's son. Donald Trump appointed John Durham, who investigated the wild claims made by this committee during the Russia investigation. And Donald Trump appointed Robert Hur, who was kept on by the Biden administration. Also, you have the right in our country to aid yourself in your own defense and talk to investigators. You also have a right not to. Mr. Attorney General, did Donald Trump sit down for an interview in the Mueller investigation?
I actually don't know, but I'm not going to comment on other investigations.
He didn't. Did he sit down for an interview with investigators prior to the January 6th indictment?
I'm not going to comment on
He didn't. He also didn't sit down for an interview with investigators in the classified materials indictment, but President Biden did sit down for a voluntary interview with Robert Hur. A jury can't hold it against Donald Trump that he did not testify in his own defense in New York, but he promised everyone else in the country that he would. You can hold it against Donald Trump that he did not testify when you consider whether you should so blindly follow every wild claim that he makes. My colleagues, none of this today that you are bringing makes sense. Your inconsistencies, your hypocrisy, your sycophancy, unless you are in a cult. And guys, I'm starting to think you're in a cult. That is your right, but it's not your responsibility. I promise you that's not what your constituents would want. So if you believe in states' rights, except when a jury in that state convicts your nominee for president, you might be in a cult. If you claim you back the blue but want to defund the police when the police go to your nominee's house to retrieve national security secrets, you might be in a cult. If you're supporting a guy whose felony convictions prevent him from getting a security clearance, you might be in a cult. And if the guy you're supporting for president has felony convictions that prevent him from going to Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Cambodia, Canada, Chile, China, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Egypt, Ethiopia, Hong Kong,
my motion
India,
takes precedent.
Indonesia, Iran, Ireland, Israel, Japan, Kenya, Macau, Malaysia, Mexico, Morocco, Nepal, New Zealand, Peru, Philippines, Singapore, South Africa, South Korea, Taiwan, Tanzania, Tunisia, Turkey, Ukraine, United Arab Emirates, and the UK,
The
you
gentleman
might
from
be in a cult.
Kentucky is recognized for 5 minutes. I'm asking that the gentleman...
I have unanimous consent request.
Gentleman has unanimous consent request.
I ask unanimous consent to submit for the record an amicus brief by the former Attorney General Edwin Meese.
Without objection?
The question presented is whether private